Hey, what up, YouTube? Welcome back to a new video with Rams Fan YT. Sorry for the long time that there has not been an upload on this video, of any type of video on this channel. It's been since January. I'm doing a degree right now, and things are incredibly stressful for a lot of a duration when I could have potentially made a video. In terms of from now, they're not going to be regular as such, but I will try and upload at least once, if not twice a week on this channel. And also the new channel, which I've just created, called Ramsan YT Does Minecraft, will start, which will obviously appeal to a completely different set of people. But if you want to join that, the link will be in the description. I'll be starting a server with some of my friends, which should be quite fun. Variation within the YouTubing content I'm making. On to the predictions. And although I'm about to sound really stupid, bearing in mind that before this point, I'd never seen a non-league game, now I have seen around about 6 or 7. So I know a bit more. So in hindsight, I probably would have changed some of these. Although saying that, 24th of Peterborough Sports, I didn't think they were going to get 14th. Admittedly, it was one of them ones which I just thought they'd never been at this level before, so they didn't have hope at standing out. Bearing in mind how early I also did the non-league predictions, that meant that the only just the retained lists had really come out. There hadn't been much transfer activity. But yeah, I respect Peterborough Sports, what they've done this season. 23rd, Banbury United. They did finish 17th, but ultimately only 5 points above relegation zone in the end. It was a tight one. Again, it's whether inexperience actually counts for anything is what I need to bear in mind next season, I think. Because clearly, even if you are inexperienced, it doesn't matter. You can stay in the league. 22nd, AFC Telford United. Okay, at least I've got this one roughly right. They did finish 24th, but ultimately they did get relegated, which is what I thought. So, I mean, but what can I say when I said that they were poor for the proportion last season? They've even been even poorer this season. I do think that they will challenge next year, but as you know, if you're a subscriber to this channel for a long time, I don't tend to look at the level below the National League North. Not that I've got anything against the teams below them. It's just, where do I draw the line? And I have to draw the line somewhere. 21st, I said Southport, which was not actually a bad shout. They did finish 18th, but it was only 1 point above the relegation zone. They had a woeful run of form at the end of the season, all things considering. Again, very similar to last season when they only won one game since February. It's a very similar tale this season, how we just fell off a cliff at the end of the season. Have they got a better goal difference? I'd certainly say that. Their goal difference was about right for where they were in the table, but it was much better than the other relegated sides. So I think they also need a big season of recruitment coming up. I'm not going to reveal my predictions yet, but I do think Southport are still in the mud, really, as current trajectory goes. But we'll see, because they have been known to turn things around massively. 20th went with Curzon Ashton. They actually finished 13th, which was unusually high for Curzon to finish, actually. I paid quite a lot of attention to the challenge for fans that they have in the area they're in. And did the goal scoring improve this season? Well, they scored 58 goals. So arguably, yes, they were at much better. They got actually a positive goal difference this season as well. So not quite right with this one, thinking that they'd be in a difficult sort of time in their life. 19th went with Buxton, and I think Buxton has come as a surprise to a lot of people that they're actually in the playoff place, or not playoff places, but playoff pushing anyhow, with only 2 points, 1 point, sorry, away from, and a hefty goal swing though, away from the playoffs. That I know they were good in the FA Cup, and I did give some of the credit towards that, but they could probably hold their own within this league. And as they have rightly gone on and improved more so. I definitely think next year that I will not be sleeping on Buxton. I think I will probably be erring more towards them, towards the topper end of the table. Their recruitment is always very, very savvy business. So yeah. 18th, Leamington. Now, Leamington finished 22nd, but again, it was only 2 points from where they currently, from actually reaching 18th. It was a very chaotic last day of the season, mind you. Kettering Town going down relegated after being out of relegation zone for much of the season, and both Blyth and Farsley staying up, really. Leamington were roughly in a relegation position around every season, really, since 2017-18, and they have finally been relegated. I thought they were just going to survive. I did think they were slightly worse than last season. I think that has now been proven that the quality was just not there for this league anymore. And I think people will probably be happy not seeing them staying up in the long haul, because in terms of positioning, they've been quite poor. 17th point was Scarborough, and they actually finished 8th, only 2 goals away from actually seeing a playoff place. I think that just shows that momentum is a great thing. I think that they have had a good following, and also I think they did have a good coach. So I thought they were going to be clear of relegation by quite some margin. I didn't quite think they were going to go ahead and sneak into the playoffs, really. Well, it wasn't really a sneak. It was sort of a drop, really. Well, they didn't sneak into the playoffs because they didn't make it, but it was certainly a drop off from where they were, because I remember when they were sort of this season around about the 5th, 6th marker. So it is a bit disappointing that they couldn't reach the playoffs this season for the Seagulls fans. 16th AFC Fylde. Yeah. That was a poor shout. I did even say at the time it was a ridiculous call, and I don't know why I made it. They have got a lot of good players. I even said so. I just didn't think that they'd be able to all go together in the right direction with the vast volume they have. But they have, and they are now top of this league, going promoted to the National League. Congratulations, and I'm sorry I ever doubted you. 15th, Alfreton. Again, they finished 5th. Not a great call. I thought they were going to be in mid-table like they usually are towards the upper end of mid-table, aren't they? But they actually reached the playoffs this year. I thought this was quite a reasonable prediction, but it doesn't look like it anymore. 14th, Chester, and Chester finished 3rd. Again, another team which I thought were going to be mid-table. Bear in mind, they did finish 16th the season before we've just had. And so I thought they were only going to slightly progress from last season. But they've really turned it around. And I was sort of sleeping on them, really. I thought the inexperience of Callum McIntyre was going to be a challenge too hard for them to overcome. But no, they have gone over leap and bounds, as some of you in the comment section did rightly point out that the recruitment was very good. 13th went with Blythe Spartans. They finished 19th. Probably not the greatest call of the season. It's not a bad one. There is quite a lot of points between that, but I think I gave too much weight probably to some of the experienced players and pre-COVID, but COVID has actually really quite weakened that team. And they are still languishing towards the bottom of the league. So I thought it was going to be more of a compromise, really, but it wasn't. 12th, Hereford. Now, this one is, I will take this one because they did finish 16th, and there was quite a big gap of 11 points. There was a bit where the mid-table completely flipped, really. It was a season of two, it was almost two leagues, almost. You could split it between 13th and 14th. But it's mid-table. I mean, I said 12th, they finished 16th. It's still mid-table positioning. So, and they normally finished in 12th. So they have had a bit of a poor season, all considering. They do have very decent players, but I did say they needed to recruit more. I don't think they really did, or not in the right areas. Hence why they have not been as successful this season. 11th, I went with Gloucester, and they actually finished 7th. But as I mentioned earlier with Buxton, there was only 1 point in it. So yeah, I think they did have disappointments when they finished 17th in the season before last. But I thought they were going to do better and just challenge. They did even better than that and actually got the playoffs in the end. I don't have reservations about the manager anymore, but I think of the players they did have at their disposal was certainly one of the reasons that they did do so well at this level. It's just which team actually got Kidderminster, wasn't it? Yeah, 10th Darlington, and this is the first one I got absolutely spot on. They finished 10th, and that's what was I saying? I said they think we're going to challenge the playoffs for a while, but they haven't reached them, and they yet again haven't. Had no problem with manager Alan Armstrong, with a good win percentage, and the decent players they have: George Smith, David Wheaton, Jake Cassidy. Well, I think that's all sort of come together to prove me almost exactly right. They were a decent side, but they really, it didn't look like they were going to finish 10th at the end of the season at one point, but they did it in typical Darlow fashion and completely bottled it. 9th, Farsley Celtic. The less talking about this one, the better. They finished 20th. Yeah, I didn't think I thought the duo would have scored a lot more goals. They really didn't. They only scored 49, which is actually 19th, worst one in the division, which you don't really want to only be scoring 49. Although Kidderminster equally scored 49, but had a much better defence. It's where the goals count, I suppose, because they had a minus 24 goal difference, having conceded 75 goals. I just was thinking they reached 11th in 2020-21, and that it was a bit of a blip last of the season before last one, I suppose now. But no, it wasn't a blip, and it seems to be the trend going forward. And I'm strongly tempted to put them relegated next season. Early predictions, of course, never a good idea, but we'll see. 8th, Bradford Park Avenue. Again, they finished 23rd. I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking here. I thought the manager was probably better than he is, and also gave a bit of credence to pre-COVID. The reason I was giving credence to pre-COVID a bit more was partly due to fans having a bigger impact on the game, and also there isn't worries of much of trying to cut the cost as much as possible. So they would try and regain some of the players that they had in the past. Bradford, however, didn't entirely end up spending wisely. Anyhow, they did spend in wages. And I think probably the lack of is one of the reasons why they did go down. 7th, Chorley actually finished 12th. I think I stand with most fans of the Lancashire outfit when saying that that is a disappointment. Quite a big one. I thought, yeah, they'll be playoff picture as usual, but they did fall off quite badly towards the end of the towards one point of the season, and they were only 2 points away from the playoffs, admittedly, but yeah, I think if you're in 12th, you're not really in a playoff picture, and 2 points is hard to reap when other teams around you are also gaining points. So yeah, I think the management was part of the issue. Yeah, Boston United, I went with 6th. They finished 15th. Yeah, I think it also a bit of a disappointing season for Boston. I thought, playoffs would be a good shout for them. They normally are within the playoff positions, never quite making it up, but yeah. And I thought Bullcocks, he was in a playoff with Eastwood Town, with Mansfield Town, just missing out in Barrow and Kettering. But I think he's gone past it, if we're being brutally honest. The fact that they finished 15th in the table that they normally are very much towards the upper end of, normally around about the 4th, 5th mark. I thought 6th was a bit, maybe a position or two too low. But no, clearly it was a position or several too high. 5th, Kettering, the less said about this one, better. 21st in the end. I need to stop looking at the history of the club, because historically they have been huge in non-league. But they did almost reach the playoffs the season before the one which we've just had, and they only missed out on 2 points. So I don't know what's happened. I think you need to ask questions why Lee Glover was given the management when he hadn't actually had any first team experience, more just various analytical ones and coach roles and stuff. And the youth really haven't actually come through. I did even say they were going to get promoted, but they got relegated. I don't really know what I was thinking there. 4th from Kings Lynn Town. Ultimately, I'm fairly happy with it. They did finish 2nd, quite a lot better than the 4th place finish, but it was playoffs and they didn't make the playoffs. They had a very decent season again this time, but as expected, probably for this level, I think there is a bit of a gulf between the National League and its respective feeder leagues. I don't think, however, there is a very much in terms of position at the top. It's very difficult to get out of. So I think you look at AFC Fylde and Kings Lynn would probably be the two which you would think had a very good fight. And I mean, Kings Lynn almost clinched it. There was only 2 points in it, and they were in the driving seat for a lot of the season. They did sort of bottle it, really. But they didn't go into free fall as I sort of expected them not to. But I didn't think they would be great as much as they have done. I thought the playoffs, comfortable playoff, but some of the season they were going to have a bit of a falter maybe at the beginning. But I should have given more credence to Tommy Widdington, who did do well. And they did strengthen well in the transfer window, didn't they? Both of them. 3rd, Brackley. They finished 4th. I'm taking this one as a win. They did fall short of winning the league this season. I don't think they were ever really within the picture of it. They were potentially going to be in third for some of the time until they sort of faltered and Chester went on a storming run ahead of them. I think they have done very well this season. Kevin Wilkin, still rated very much as a manager, even though they didn't win the FA Trophy this season. Congratulations to FC Halifax, who did, by the way. But yeah, second I went with Kidderminster Harriers. They did finish 6th in the end. They finished strongly. Admittedly, 6th was a bit lucky, but I think they did deserve the playoffs, and congratulations on their promotion, of course. I did not expect them to go up. They did have a few internationals, and I did say they were the best non-league club in a video I did at one point. And I certainly agree that I don't think they'll do extremely well next season, but I think there's a potential for them to probably finish just the relegation zone, somewhere around about 17th mark. I don't think they'll get relegated straight away this season. I can't say the same for Oxford City, but I think Kidderminster are a big club. And Russell Penn is an incredible manager. Do rate him quite highly. So yeah. And first, I went with Spennymoor Town. They did finish 9th in the end, only on goal difference away from actually sealing a playoff position. It was a bit of a wild call, I must admit. But I did think some of the recruitment looked positive. They sort of slowed down towards the second half of the window and others sort of sped up. That's always the issue with predicting this time of the season. They do have a joint management team. I don't know if they still do, but I'm pretty certain they do, which clearly has worked. And I thought it was going to go really quite well, but not quite as well as it did. But they did do well in the end. They did sort of get away a bit from their mid-table rut. They didn't quite get the playoffs, but it was certainly not the sort of 11th, 12th we were used to seeing. On to the National League South. We got 24th Cheshunt. Now, I believe Cheshunt finished, they finished 23rd, one win above 24th. Ultimately, it wasn't that hard of a decision for me to make, to be honest. I didn't think they were good enough at this level. They really haven't been. I mean, Hungerford Town have been a disappointment of many a seasons in a row, and I might mention some of their woes a bit later. They only just sneaked into a playoffs, bearing in mind in Tier 7, so I don't think they really merited being in a... Well, we did buy over the playoffs, of course, but I don't think in terms of their season that they were going to stay up at this level. Although I thought Craig Edwards was a manager who could surprise us, but I think we'll see if they could challenge again next season. It's going to be a challenge, though. Southern League, as always, quite a strong one. 23rd, I went with Dover Athletic. They actually finished 20th on goal difference above relegation zone. So all of those who were saying that Dover are going to have an amazing season, they've recruited well, they're not in as much danger as you think, where are you now? Because we'll probably come up with some other club which I've messed up on. The 2 goals outside relegation zone. Dulwich Hamlet, I think, was quite unfortunate that they didn't survive. And I think Weymouth were extremely lucky that they did survive. But the financial instability at this club in Kent has really proven, and I am still a bit trepidation, not as much as they were before. They have sort of steadied the ship a bit with a bit of recovery with the increase of fans coming. And I did think the manager was quite poor, Andy Hesseltine. and I am minded not to sort of heap praises on them. I don't care if they were in the National League only the season before last. They're not a good team at the moment. Bit in free fall, really. 22nd, I went with Farnborough. They did finish 12th. This call was a hard one to make, really, because, as I said, I haven't really looked in depth at the Southern League. Or the Isthmian League, for that matter. I have looked a bit in the Northern Premier League. I've seen a few games this season and went to South Shields and their fantastic run and stuff like that. But I really couldn't see them staying up, and they have managed it. And I think the experience of being at this level before did help. And I certainly don't think it was the strongest National League South we've ever seen. I think some of the teams have not been as good as they could have potentially been, like Bath and Welling have not really been, or Hampton and Richmond. These teams haven't been ripping up the leagues. They've been sort of average, haven't Waterlooville. We'll come on to all these later, but certainly in terms of strength, I think that's one of the reasons why they've done quite a bit better than I thought. 21st went with Hemel Hempstead Town. They did actually finish 15th. So yeah, they were more mid-table mediocrity as they have seemed to be. I didn't think their squad was actually good enough. But again, they haven't really been challenging for promotion. That sort of applied this season, but they weren't really at the other end of the table either. So yeah, I thought they were going to slip without realising. I didn't think Jones was enough manager. I mean, he's probably not. The season's been incredibly flatlining. 15 wins, 15 draws, and 16 losses. That's as flatlining as you get, really, or inconsistent if you want another word for it. So yeah, that's how you get mid-table, not how you get 21st. 20th, I went with Taunton Town. I think 14th is still a bit high for them for this season. They have done well in terms of they have accumulated quite a lot of wins. The only issue is for games they've lost, because they have also accumulated quite a lot of losses. Haven't really been somewhere in between. I thought the Welsh contingent, though, was a good contingent. I just thought a lack of experience could have posed a bit of a thorn in the side. But I think Rob Dray has done quite well. He's adapted well to this league in the end. 19th, Slough Town. They finished 18th, 3 points difference. I'm going to take this, I think, as a good prediction. I thought they were poor over the last few seasons. They've continued to be. And I don't think their management has been a great success. I don't know if they've got rid of it yet. As I said, I've not really been keeping on tap. I've not heard that they've got rid of their management. But in terms of positioning, you were kind of lucky. You were 3 points away from relegation. Never really looked threatened, mind you. But it's one of those things like, where does the club want to go in the future? 18th went with Bath City. They did finish 11th. Probably shouldn't have said 18th. They did finish 18th in the 2 seasons in a row, though. So their squad hadn't changed that much when I was recording the video. They have improved since. So I didn't think they'd be able to improve, but I think they have certainly improved quite a bit. Still not enough anywhere near to be being playoff challengers. Very much still sort of in the mid-table picture, if we think about it. But yeah, I think better than a relegation scrap maybe next season. I'll be a bit more kind. 17th, Chelmsford. They actually finished 5th. Bit of a hard pill to swallow, this one. I mean, admittedly, they hadn't ever really been looking like they were going to challenge the playoffs. I don't think anyone would really said that they were going to, and instead they were more saying that there wasn't any commentary about Chelmsford, and I think it was a reasonable call to say they would be in mid-table. I think Robbie Simpson, I owe an apology to. You've clearly managed to steer this ship around. Yeah, I think they did bring in a quite competent centre forward towards the end of the season, because they did, ish. Wasn't as great. There were 67 goals they scored in total, which is actually more towards sort of like 10th position. It's not playoff form, and that's probably why they've not been promoted. Yeah. 16th on Concord Rangers. They ultimately finished in relegation zone in 22nd. So I don't think it was probably an underperformance of the season, definitely in terms of the beach or sunny seaside Essex outfit of the club. So I did think their squad was pretty bad, and I think I have been convicted of that. And I wasn't convinced in the manager either. I think both of them has been proved. They did sack their manager. I'm pretty certain I saw that at one point, but could be wrong. Let me know if I am. But in terms of this season, it's gone horribly wrong. I thought their experience was just going to be able to keep them in mid-table, though. 15th went with Dulwich Hamlet. They finished 21st. Admittedly, it was sort of a last day affair. I didn't think they were going to be relegated. I kept on thinking they wouldn't be relegated, but on the last day they were relegated. So yeah, I think age in the squad needs to be reduced. There is a lot of old legs in this side. So I think injuries was probably an issue, or legs certainly towards the end of the season was definitely an issue. You didn't have a bad form and in the last 5 games or so, but there was a period when you just didn't look like you were going to make it. I think the management is probably actually an issue. And normally they finished challenging towards mid-table, so of the upper end of mid-table towards the playoffs. So definitely a disappointing season. 14th, I went with Braintree. They did actually finish 7th. Braintree has recovered their form from the past then, because they were a good team before COVID. Again, it's hard to really tell when they only have 3 players under contract who they're going to bring in. That they were on a downward trajectory from the relegation from the National League that they had. And then they were just sort of struggling towards the bottom of the end of the division. But this clean slate has actually really helped them because it enabled them to finish in the playoffs. Ultimately, it didn't really look in doubt come the last few games of the season. But yeah, I'm impressed. 13th, Welling United. They actually finished 16th, which, thinking about it, there's only 4 points between the two sides. It is mid-table either way. The signings, I still stand by some of these acquisitions were encouraging. It's just they didn't continue signing that level of players in the future. Goals, was it an issue, really? I mean, not really. It was about where you'd expect. They probably scored a bit less than they probably should have. That's more towards bottom end, and that's probably why I said that the defence was an issue. But yeah, the investment in defence certainly pulled off. They did have a much better defence than the teams below them, and I think it's almost verging on sort of upper mid-table levels, where 13th probably would have been justified. I didn't really know about Warren Feeney, and I don't think I'm none the wiser anymore from this about whether he's a good manager or not. He's just in mid-table, really. I mean, it was all in like foreign leagues where he did his big thing. So it was one of them things. Not really sure. He's probably mid-table as is the squad. 12th, I went with Chippenham Town. They finished 13th. I'll take that one. Quite impressed with that one. There was a fair whack of points between the two. Again, splitting into the two, but I thought that it was an overachievement where they finished last season, and I stick by that because the table sort of justifies my argument with them finishing 13th. So yeah, they didn't replicate what they did last season, and they did finish very comfortably mid-table, mind you. That they weren't. They at the end of the season they were sort of having a bit of an upturn away from their relegation. Well, they weren't ever going to get relegated, but towards the bottom half of mid-table. But no, they sort of steered it to sort of almost dead on. They didn't invest massively, which I think was probably wise, but probably meant that they didn't get in the playoffs. 11th, Eastbourne Borough. Eastbourne finished 8th. Again, not too bad. They probably were a bit better this season than I was going to give them credit for. They didn't quite make the playoffs, as I said, but I think they were going to be competitive, and ultimately they were. I just thought there was going to be a few more teams that was competitive, but ultimately weren't competitive, as we'll come on to. That prior to COVID, they were actually a bit poorer than a playoff team of being in 8th. So I wasn't surprised that if they'd finished somewhere like this, like they did in like 2016-17 season. But no, they've done a bit better. I think their squad is a bit better than 50-50. I think we'll go 60-40 now. Because some of their average players are probably better than I gave credit for. 10th, Hungerford Town. Right, this was a stupid prediction. They finished last in the league. It did often tend to challenge for the playoffs and never quite seemed to make them. I don't think it was a ridiculous call to make for them to be in 10th, to be honest. They also had quite a large squad come the start of the season. Like, they could rotate. And I feel even Danny Robinson, he was a very successful manager. And I thought we were going to show a bit of signs of progression. No, they fell off a cliff. I don't know what entirely happened. If you are a Hungerford fan, let me know what has gone wrong this season, because I'm really struggling to see, well, the 72 goals conceded isn't actually worse. It's the best of the relegated sides, and there's a few sides above which are better, but I think the defence could probably be improved. The goal scoring is not too bad. It is quite bad in compared to the division. You probably need a striker, I would say, come the future, though. But yeah. 9th, Oxford City. Now, I actually got promoted in the playoffs in 3rd for winning the playoffs. But I thought they overachieved that season before one we just had. I think Alfie Potter is a good player, and I will probably mention him again in the predictions coming up for the National League in a few videos' time, because I really like what he sees. He's experienced and he knows how, and there's a few others experienced. But I didn't think they had quite enough to get to the playoffs. They clearly did and go further than that. Ross Jenkins was my biggest worry. I'm not as concerned about him anymore as I was. Whether he can replicate being competitive in the National League is yet to be seen. To be honest, I'm a bit worried for them. But we'll see. 8th, St Albans City. They finished 6th in the end, 4 points higher than where I predicted them. They did score lots of goals. Jeffers, again, coming... Well, actually, it was a bit of an off-season in terms of goals. It was only 66 for the whole team. But again, it was a competitive amount. So Yeah, I knew that the management had a very successful CV at his level, what he did with Boreham Wood, and some of which is St Albans. So I think he has sort of replicated that this season. Obviously, they got to the playoff final, didn't they? But didn't win it in the end. But yeah, they sort of have been floating around either in or out the playoff picture. I think probably again next season. Probably, maybe go be a bit more confident with them being in the playoffs next season, though. We'll see. Seventh went with Tonbridge Angels. They finished ninth. It's a sort of straightforward swap, really, between my prediction of where Braintree was going to be in Tonbridge. I mean, yeah, it's the Tonbridge side is decent. What can I say? The internationals they have. I did say we're going to be underdogs. There probably is an underdog position of being in the playoffs. Ninth, is that still an underdog position? Probably from what they've been in the last few seasons. I don't think that's a bad call to make, that where they finished wasn't millions of miles away from where it is. The crew recruitment, I think, was decent, which I think was sort of definitely told what came to pass when we came into the current part of the season, and they did look more towards the up than many of us expected. I just thought that underdog mentality would take them a step further. It just wasn't quite enough. So yeah, all of you people who are laughing at me about Tonbridge, I hope you reconsider, and also try predicting this league yourself, because it is incredibly difficult. As you can see, some of them I've got wildly wrong, but some of them I've got quite good, which were a bit crazy shouts. Sixth, I went with Ebbsfleet, and Ebbsfleet won the league by a country mile, 20 points clear of the nearest team at 103 points. Wow. Just wow. What can be said about this team? They're the best in the league, and I think it shows a golfing class between them and the rest. In terms of, I thought they did have very good players, but that is more than very good. That is extremely good. That is an excellent team. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I didn't want to go through the starting 11 one by one, but if they are on paper the best starting 11, I think struggles to see many other players fitting in the team of the season, really, don't you? And I did like the management, and it did seem to work in the end very much. They scored 110 goals. That attacking style of play was good. They also didn't concede many goals. Could be a good season next season. We'll have to see, because again, the attacking teams, do they always adapt well to not being up there and the favourites? Ebbsfleet were certainly favourites to being in the picture of promotion, of which I thought they were going to get sixth. Fifth, I went with Dartford. They actually finished second in the end. There was 5 points between the two. Again, not too bad. I think Dartford sort of bottled the promotion chase. They didn't really want to replicate a Wrexham Notts County race to the first position. So instead they decided, nah, you can have that and we'll try and compete in the playoffs, which is a bad mentality to have. I'm sure that wasn't the actual mentality, but it was certainly looked like that towards the end of the season. And I did think, again, the time I was predicting it, I didn't know who was going to be in the squad. They were quite limited at the time. But I did think they were going to make the playoffs, because they always seem to. They did. They did much better than I thought, but again, couldn't really have told. Alan Dawson, I did rate as a non-league management due to his various promotions from various leagues. Yeah, I would still say that he is the manager for the forward, and maybe they might do win the league next season, but I'm erring towards not. Partly because the National League South is going to be so much more competitive next season with some of them heavyweights coming down. Yeah. Fourth, Worthing, and they finished fourth. I want nobody to say that I am bad at predicting non-league. I want apologies and comments if you were hurtful, because genuinely, I'm outstanding at some of these predictions. Like, I'm not known for predicting well in non-league, but I think I've done relatively well with the tier 6 this season. I think their success in the Isthmian League was certainly translated in their success in the National League. And yeah, the form definitely was infectious. They were constantly, didn't look like they were going to drop out of playoffs. They were always sort of nailed on for a spot. Unfortunately, didn't manage for promotion in the end, but did not disappoint. Third, I went with Havant and Waterlooville. They finished 10th. But bearing in mind the amount of goals they scored of 80 was more than enough to get into the playoffs. Their goals conceded was more than enough to be in the bottom half of the table. That is the issue with the season. So, I mean, look, I looked at Paul Doswell and the fact that he was offered the management at a League One club and turned it down. Maybe he's ruining that decision now, because I think 10th, when I think they were expected a much better season, certainly to be in the playoffs, I think is a bit of a disappointment. I do think Paul Doswell will continue at the club. I'm no doubt about it. I don't think he's going to walk out now. But I thought Havant and Waterlooville, successful club, they're going to continue to be successful. We'll see how they deal next season, whether they have that bounce back ability or whether they sort of struggle to acclimatise to some of the new heavyweights to come into the division. Because I have been saying it, this season's National League South has been much weaker than it is normally, and that's not going to be the same next season. Second, I went with Weymouth, and Weymouth actually did finish 19th, almost relegated. It's hard to tell with newly promoted. Sorry. It's hard to tell with newly relegated teams, rather. They change leagues. And, you know, some teams can do really well when they're relegated, as I'm expecting a few to next season, get their house in order and stuff and progress. And I thought Weymouth sort of expected to be relegated. They were presumably planning for this for quite a while. Clearly they weren't, because they were quite atrocious this year. I thought the squad was strong. And I thought David Oldfield was quite experienced at this level. But no, I think that's come up as a bit of a shock to me, seeing Weymouth down there. I think now they survive, they need to sort of reevaluate what's gone wrong this season and how can they change. Hampton Richmond Borough was who I went to win the league. As I said earlier, as we finished 17th this season, they have underperformed massively. They were in the playoffs for several seasons recently, really. I thought they're going to be up there again this season, and no, they haven't. And really, I think Gary McCann is not the manager who could really lead them forward anymore. Right, on to the National League. Again, another very tough league to call. Less tough than I'd say some of the National League North and South teams to predict. 24th, I said York City. They actually finished 19th. So York, I apologise, you did much better. Normally, I don't see the playoff sides doing particularly well. That said, they have sort of done well, haven't they? It was due to the lack of experience, although I think they did eventually bring some experienced players in at this level. I think John Askey has proved his worth, though, and certainly I think York will be more than safe next season. Some of the acquisitions they made already in these early stages of the season does look like they're moving in a positive direction. They brought the goalkeeper from Sheffield Wednesday, was it Dawson, to the club. That is a huge signing for a club at this level. So yeah, I think certainly more to come from York in the future. Not promotion yet, we'll see in the predictions, but certainly good. 23rd, I went with Dorking Wanderers. They actually finished 16th, so they acclimatised pretty well to the league, I think. My biggest issue was that they'd never been at this level before, and subsequent promotions, it can be good. But at the same time, they have not really relied on bringing other players in, and I only really thought 4 players were good enough for this level. So, but I don't know about the mass recruitment. They may have got some better players in. But I think in terms of finish, respectable. Do I think they're going to challenge next season? No. Do I think they'll be mid-table next season? Probably. 22nd, Barnet. Now, Barnet, one of them teams that normally do challenge in the playoffs, and they were in 5th this season, so I'm not entirely sure what I was thinking about. The attendances, I think, was part of my driving force. They haven't had as much fans in the National League as they had when they were in League Two. And I think they did have really a bit of a period of stagnation, apart from one decent season in 2019-20. And I mean, if you look, 2020-21, they were in 22nd. I thought that was going to be, a bit more merit to that. But I also thought Dean Brennan wasn't a good manager, and I'm not sure what's happened. I don't know if he's actually still at the club, but maybe he actually has managed to turn the ship around. It's really shocking for me that Barnet's actually managed to get in the playoffs again. I need to reevaluate that. 21st, I said Maidstone United. They finished 24th, so ultimately they did get relegated. Just much worse than every other team in the league by a considerable margin. They were never going to survive. I don't think that squad is. I don't know how we're going to cope next season. I think they're going to be in a battle next season, actually, again, because of that atrocity of a performance. The thing is the experience that their manager had was getting the team he was with relegated. Never do that. I mean, again, there's, I think, probably new management, but again, I think not enough for me to really. I don't see any positives in the future, Maidstone, unfortunately. 20th, I've gone with Woking. Woking finished 4th. And this was a stupid shout. I thought they were quite mediocre. They'd finished mid-table for the season before. And I didn't think they were very competitive in this level. I did think they had experience in non-league. Don't get me wrong, I think they did have enough players to do well. But I didn't believe in Darren Sarll. But I probably should have, by the looks of it, because he has done well this season. It's really difficult to speak this long. 19th, Boreham Wood. Again, finished 6th. What is it with me predicting all the playoff people to have poor seasons? I think my issue is giving too much credence towards former EFL teams. Because Boreham Wood have been at this level for quite a while now. And they're very much a mid-table side in this league, but clearly have pushed on to be playoffs this season. I didn't think they were as good. I did think they had some good players, don't get me wrong. But clearly the rest of the players really lifted their performance. And I think they did bring some a bit more prestige players in as well, but we'll see. 18th, Gateshead. They did finished 14th, which I think even surprised me looking at that. And I've seen this table several times before. I personally thought they were more like down in like 17th or something, but no. Yeah. I mean, Gateshead didn't deserve to be relegated when they were relegated the last time they were at that level. And I thought they weren't hugely improved, hugely mad. When I saw them, they were atrocious. Okay. I've seen them once this season. They were by far the worst team I'd ever seen. And I saw Derby get battered 4-0 by Leeds at one point. The fact they lost 4-2 against, I think they were Southend, and only matched the Southend fans. And bearing in mind that Southend were not in good form coming into this match, it was not entirely the best performance. And we thought the can't remember what the name of his player is, the one which used to play for Newcastle United, who's like 38 or something, was well past it. And the centre forward did nothing all game until they actually brought him off and replaced him with some a bit of energy up front. We thought he was useless. But I think they did have a good pool of talent in the end, and that's why they did end up in 14th. Obviously, one game in the season does not define your whole season. I am not suggesting that, but certainly queries over their defence and attack are certainly questions I have for a future trajectory. They did all right in the end, but they did have to sort of ride the wave a bit. 17th, Southend United. They actually finished 8th. Yeah, they were mid-table one of the seasons. I think it was the season before last. And I didn't have much hope that they were going in the right direction. You sort of hear these stories all the time about, players not paid wages on time, or potential new owners and stuff like that. Very difficult, therefore, to make a prediction on a basis that they could have a points deduction. Ultimately, they didn't this season, although maybe they should have. That is a whole nother debate raging amongst the non-league community at the moment, I think. I thought they were going to get into admin. And so if you actually look at the 12 points, if you take 12 points off of 69 points, you get 57, which is, with their current goal difference, 16th. I predicted them 17th. So I think they were lucky not to be in administration. And my whole sort of prediction was on that basis that they would be in administration. It looks like they are getting new owners, which is good news for the coastal club. But indeed, it is a query. I think this one needs a little asterisk next to it of bearing in mind I thought they were going to enter admin. 16th, Eastleigh. Eastleigh actually finished 9th. Clearly, they've proven me wrong that the non-league clubs are actually quite a bit, or traditional non-league clubs are certainly a lot more stronger than the fallen giants as such. I knew they have been at this level for a long time, Eastleigh, don't get me wrong. But I thought that every season they were going to be in between their normal position. And they finished ninth. And I said it could be anywhere between ninth and 16th. No one really knows because they have finished all over the place. But they ended up finishing at the upper end of this sort of thing, this table this season. They're good players they added to. Lee Bradbury, again, probably owe an apology to. But yeah. 15th Aldershot. They finished 18th. Yeah, I'm not too bothered about this one. I don't think Aldershot were ever really in a relegation scrap. They never really looked like going much higher than their current position, maybe as high as 16th, but don't think. I think mid-table was probably what you'd say. I did once predict Aldershot to win the league, and I'm not making that mistake again. No, I thought they were sort of floating around mid-table. So they sort of floated towards the bottom end of mid-table, admittedly, probably far from safe, despite what I think. They did have some good transfers come in, but were they the same standard as the rest of the teams in the division around them? Probably not. 14th went with Maidenhead United. They finished 20th. Bit more squeaky bum than it was probably wanted, to be honest. I thought they were going to improve from last season. Actually went the other way. Yeah, I based it on sort of my historical research of where they'd finished over the last few seasons. They normally are mid-table, so the fact that they were worse this season is worrying. Do I think that they'll be much better next season? Probably not. Probably around about 18th, I imagine. But we'll see. 30th from Oldham Athletic. They finished 12th. I'll take this one. 1 point in it. Yeah, I was worried about the ownership, and I still am, to be honest. Not heard as negative stories about that, but that could be partly due to them being in the National League. You don't really get much media coverage if you're a club struggling in the National League, unless you're Southend, apparently. They did have decent players, but I think it was not great in terms of the season, whereabouts I expected them in the end. And John Sheridan was a player or manager, that doesn't really warrant his contract being extended, to say the least. I thought they were quite poor. They finished the season strongly, of course, but throughout the season, I think they were quite poor, to be honest. 12th, Wealdstone. They finished 13th, so pretty much interchangeable with Oldham. Mid-table is, as ever, almost impossible to get the precise teams correct, but we'll take this one. I thought, yeah, with several good internationals and very good forwards, they're going to be completely fine in terms of goal-scoring output. It was only 57 goals, so wasn't amazing. Their defence, however, was much better. 72 goals. Oh, sorry, much worse. Sorry. But much worse. That's an issue, the 72 goals conceded. Not as much as the 91 conceded by Dorking, or the 82 conceded by Altrincham, or the 87 conceded by Scunthorpe, or even the 104 conceded by Maidstone. But the 72 is still quite a big number of goals to concede, especially if you want to progress. I think they were very far away from pushing for promotion, really. I think They never looked like they were going to be relegated or promoted. It was just sort of one of them seasons, wasn't it? 11th, I went with Wrexham. That was stupid. They actually won the league. I think everyone knows they won the league with 111 points. If you don't know they won the league, what are you doing on this channel? Really? Like, I think it's been everywhere, splashed across the papers. I just thought, you know, just splashing money at it, it doesn't always work and it could cause a rift. But no, they have all pulled towards the same direction. And congratulations, Wrexham, on your promotion to the EFL. 10th one with Chesterfield, they actually finished third. Never doubt Chesterfield. They always do well at this league. I thought they were going to have quite a catastrophic drop-off. They did at one point, but they managed to rescue that. There was a point where they were sort of like around about the 5th position mark, but it didn't continue. It's normally like only one of the slumps, don't it? As soon as like sort of like winter comes around, sort of February time, a bit cold, and then they start doing quite poorly on the pitch. But no, they turned it around. And they didn't sack Paul Cook, which is a very good idea, because Paul Cook is a very good manager at this level. And they actually only lost the playoffs on penalties. I was rooting, of course, for Chesterfield to get promoted. Was very disappointed when they did not, because also partly because the whole media seemed to be rooting for Notts County. I didn't like that. 9th, Altrincham. They actually finished 17th. Don't really know what I was thinking with this one. They did have some good players, like genuinely Josh Lundstrom and Ben Pringle. Very good players. Phil Parkinson, still a good manager, but he's not quite the level that I probably raised him to, of being a serial challenger for the playoffs and promotion. No, I think he is in lower leagues, probably not in the National League. Although, admittedly, the budget of Altrincham is nowhere near the budget of some of these clubs in the National League, and that is sort of reflected where they finished this season. 8th, Yeovil. My days, Yeovil finishing 22nd came as a shock. What has happened? I mean, generally, like not just this season, right? We all know that the season was a bit of a blip, not scoring anywhere near enough goals to stay in this league. But what happened over the last 5 years? Since like they were in the Championship at one point, I believe. Same with Scunthorpe, which we'll come to later. But generally, like their owners are poor. But again, if you've fallen down to the 6th tier, when I was thinking that you had enough of a squad to challenge for the playoffs, that's a difficulty. I thought, yeah, they'd signed some good player, maybe a bit of experience, but they didn't. The players they signed were average, bang average for this level. And yeah, so I'm sorry that I predicted you so high. 7th, I went with FC Halifax Town. Yeah, they do have good players. They did finish 11th in the end, 10 points clear of the playoffs. So I think it's one of them things where could improve for next season, but not drastically. They've done all right, actually. I think the start of the season was quite poor, but they definitely grew into it and actually won a cup in the end of it as well with the FA Trophy. So in terms of the good players, they are still good players, but probably a bit of youth wouldn't go amiss. Well, Scunthorpe United on paper compared to Scunthorpe United in real life are two very different things. You looked at the squad; they seem to be one of the best in the leagues, and they also seem to have one of the best managers in the league. But no, again, part of it is the conceding of 87 goals. That is a heck of a lot of goals to concede, especially when you've not even scoring 50. Like, genuinely, you've got to think Scunthorpe in the future are not looking bright. Although I think there was a new takeover recently, I believe, or rumours of a new takeover anyhow, which could certainly change the fortunes. But I don't think Scunthorpe has ever been this low in the pyramid now, actually, having just fallen into falling into the 6th tier, and unless you like excluding like before the pyramid started, of course, like that. We don't do that here. We don't think that the pyramid started until the National League system of promotion occurred. Well, at least the Alliance Premier League was formed and had promotion and relegation between the Northern Premier League and stuff like that. We do think that football did exist when this channel. We do think that all football across all history should be equally merited. But in terms of level system, they've never been this low. And really, it's hard to see where they're going to end up in the future. It's not looking good. It's Gunny. Beef, I went with Notts County. They actually finished second and got promoted in the playoffs. I did like name check their like entire starting 11s, good players. I was just thinking Luke Williams really was not up for the crack of a job, maybe because of his inexperience and his poor win percentage with Swindon. I think he has sort of laid them issues to bed. I don't think they were ever going to be able to beat Wrexham to that race in the end, because they both only lost 3, but I think they could have, but could have, should have, would have is a phrase that you can chuck around for sort of that sort of thing. But they got promoted in the end, which is what the people in Nottingham are wanting, really. 4th, Bromley. They finished 7th, so I take that. It's a playoff position of sorts. There was quite a big golfing class between them, but they always sort of reach the playoffs, don't we? Well, sort of, at least challenge it. And yeah, I thought they were going to do so again, and I think I'm right. I think they were probably slightly worse than I heaped the praises onto them. But in terms of squad, I think Andy Woodman, good manager. Did they end up winning about half their games? No, but they didn't lose many. They, I mean, they only lost 11, which is much better than it's actually sort of 3rd in the league in terms of losses. So certainly, if they converted a few of them draws into wins, we could have been seeing my prediction almost spot on, really. 3rd, Torquay United. No, they also got relegated. I'm not sure if I'm giving too much credence to former EFL clubs in my predictions. I think that may be a slight issue, which I may need to look at for the next year's predictions. But they did finish 2nd in 2020-21. And so I was just really confused about why they struggled this season. They never looked like staying up. They were sort of pushing and pushing and pushing, but just didn't have that sort of thing, did they? A lack of confidence or belief, maybe. A lot of their players, I think, need to move on and a complete rehaul. I think Gary Johnson is needing to go. He's been too bad at this club. 2nd, Dagenham and Redbridge. Oh, they finished 10th. Again, the Dagenham and Redbridge team was one of them ones which I thought, They've got the right age of people who they can go and push on. And I thought they had slowly been building. This slow building is continuing, admittedly quite at a slower pace. In fact, I would say almost stagnant at this point. Daryl McMahon, I still think is a good manager. I think he did a good job getting Ebbsfleet out of the league a few seasons back, I think it was. And I think Dagenham had an easier National League. I know we all talk about hypotheticals, and the worst of the league was certainly awful. But in terms of, I'd say anywhere between sort of even like 20th, the top of the league, are all like teams that got over 50 points, like 50 over. Like that is a competitive league and a strong league. Like normally, if you have 48 points in the season, like Torquay did, you would survive. But no, well, maybe not in the National League because of the 14 relegation system. But it is one of them things, like, quite frankly, amazes me that teams are this competitive. And I think that's all down to the fact that there's only 2 up system. You don't, because when the teams come down, they are not used to it, and everyone's trying to get out the league as much as possible. Another reason for the 3 up, 3 down between League 2 and the National League. Yeah. And first put Solihull Moors. This, they actually finished 15th, but this was sort of based on the season that they had before. And if people recall, they did just miss out on promotion. They were very close. They were in the playoff final. And it was a new era, a new winning mentality. They had a few decent players, Joe Sabara, to name one. I remember a few more rattled in the actual original video. But I haven't actually really done that well this season. I think it's been a poor season from Solihull. I think we're probably going to see a change of some sort. Maybe a new management, I don't know, or whether they stick with manager and try and bring some bleed in some youth, and sort of, or whether they still continue to be lonely feeder clubs from upper leagues like Coventry or Birmingham and stuff like that, as they currently are. Of course, next season they've got to contend with the Wasps playing at their stadium. We'll see how that impacts them as well. But on to League 2. It was a very interesting season. 24th, I had Barrow, which I think instantly tells you just how badly I messed up, because they finished 9th. It is a problem trying to predict these sort of leagues. They would have been relegated if Scunthorpe and Oldham weren't so bad that season. Last season. Well, the season before last, I suppose. But I think something's just clicked this season, hasn't it? Although they've just been on a horrendous 4-game losing streak. So something also isn't clicking. It's one of them things, like they were sort of going very, very fast and then veered off into. I mean, they were in the playoffs, weren't they, for quite a long bit, and then they just sort of bottled that. I mean, do I put them towards playoffs next season, or do I actually say no, they're going to be challenging relegation again? But this season, I think much better than what I had initially thought for them. 23rd, I said Rochdale. I'm taking this one. They finished 24th. They were relegated. I mean, that it is the financial difficulties of the Greater Manchester clubs all seem to be having at the moment. apart from the obviously big two in the Prem and Bolton. But the rest seem really not good scenes. I think I've not heard anything about Stockport doing anything poorly in terms of decision making, or Salford City, but the traditional ones which we see as like up there, and it's just I didn't think they would enter administration, and they didn't. But it has been a poor season, and I think Robbie Stockdale was a poor choice in the first place to appoint him, and yeah, they would. With that win percentage, there was not a chance they were going to stay up, and that's what happened. 22nd went with Stevenage. Now, right, Stevenage getting second is mad. I mean, if I had a dummy, I'd spit it out. They are. How on earth they have managed that, I do not know. They've only just scraped survival for like years. They only finished in the top half like twice, once in 2018 and one in 2014-15. Like 2014-15 was the last time they reached the playoffs. How did they get promoted? Clearly the recruitment of many of the players worked really well, and I must admit I dislike Steve Evans, but I mean his relegation record was awful, but how has he done that? I'm still stunned about the Stevenage promotion. 21st, Bradford City. They finished 6th. Okay, I'm going to say it now. League Two has been the hardest season to predict this season. They did have a big haul out and change in that window, mind you. But they hit the ground running much better than I gave them credit for. And Mark Hughes has done much better than I predicted. He's clearly back to his A-day, 2008-9. And it turns out trying to apply a Premier League style of play does work when you're in the lower leagues. But yeah, I thought it was going to be a bit more like a Leeds United, have an absolute all-out attack and stuff. Just didn't work. But no, they did all right. And although they didn't score ridiculous amounts, they scored 61 seems to be a lot of like normal amount of goals for like all of the teams in the top half. Why have so many teams scored 61 goals? But yeah, 20th Salford. Yeah, I don't know why I put that, but Salford finished 7th. I think a part of me was a dislike of the way that Salford go about of constantly chopping and changing management. So I thought, yeah, it would be hard to get a rhythm, and they'd just end up in 20th, flatlining. 19th, Hartlepool. Now, Hartlepool actually got relegated in 23rd, sort of breaking the mold, should I say, of promoted clubs from the National League doing well. They finished in this position in 2013-14, so I thought it was going to be like, similar season to that. It's not a too vastly different league. There's a few teams obviously there which are different, Harrogates, your Salfords and stuff like that, but the Spees, Barrows, Stockports. But I thought, yeah, roughly the same sort of league setup. There's very similar teams who are sort of vying for similar positions. But I just thought they were going to have bad form from January onwards, but never had bad form from the start. Like, none of that promotion bounce. And signings I thought were decent were clearly not. 18th, Crewe Alexandra. Now, they finished 13th. With Crewe, it's always the case that they sort of cruise along at mid-table. But they had such an awful season, the one before the one we've just had, that I thought 18th was being generous and seeing it as a sort of upturn in form. But actually, they've done better and gone 13th, which I respect very well. But I didn't really trust in Alex Morris, but clearly the Railwaymen should have, and did an amazing result as a result of this. 17th went with Grimsby. Again, 11th. Quite shocking for me. They did have a good core of a squad, which they managed to retain and improve upon to get better. It was one of the things, like, I didn't expect them to be mid-table at that height. I thought, they'd be sort of languishing, maybe top end of, or bottom end, mid-table, top end of a relegation pack. Unfortunately, with only 2 relegated teams, it doesn't become as competitive at the bottom of the table as it should be, maybe. But congratulations, Grimsby, for your shocking of me in terms of being able to get 11th. 16th, Harrogate, they finished 19th. Okay, I'm not too fussed about this one. This one's only 3 points in it in the end. There was a lot of teams on 55 points this season, though. I think they are still that sort of team which is in and around about for relegation scraps, but have pushed themselves up and away. I mean, Simon Weaver is a top manager. I think there is an argument to say that Simon Weaver is one of the best managers in English football. And I know people aren't going to like that, with people saying, oh, it's Pep, oh, it's Klopp, or whatever. I think, genuinely, Simon Weaver and what he's done with Harrogate is, quite frankly, phenomenal. His successive promotions and then managing to adapt to the EFL to keep his side in it is a stunning testament to his management ability and adaptability. Anyhow, 15th on the other side of the north, I put Carlisle United, who actually finished 5th, not 15th. Maybe should have changed that. Just scribble out all on there. I'm thinking, if I can, I might try and see Carlisle United next season. So it's when Derby go away and go and play them. So I think the thing is with Carlisle is I think historically they have been successful, and I should have taken that with me instead of sort of placing credence on that one season, which was a bit of a blip last time. I think Paul Simpson is a great manager, by the way. I genuinely do, but I didn't think he was going to be a promotion-winning manager. But I should have paid more attention to that attacking sort of players, sort of Ryan Edmondson, Jordan Gibson, and Murray Patrick. These are some great players. They scored 66 goals, which, like, normally you don't think is a lot. In terms of relativity to the league, that is like the 3rd best amount of goals scored. And that's what you need with promotion, really, isn't it? 14th from Colchester United. They did actually finish 20th in the end. I think the experience probably wasn't as good as I thought they would. the experience probably was, my faith in them was misplaced, and that's why they finished 20th. 13th, Newport County, they finished 15th. I'm accepting this. There was 1 point in it. Genuinely, like, if they got 1 more point in this season, they would have been 13th. And, you know, they were doing what they normally do, sort of cruising in mid-table. They normally, or sometimes they do challenge for the playoffs, to be fair, but I didn't see it coming this season, and I was quite rightly proved. 12th, Crawley Town. They actually finished 22nd. That was a bit of a shock for this. They always really finish mid-table, and it's been years since they didn't finish 12th. So I think it was. I do think that Kevin Betsy was sort of a risky appointment, and I think the actual final table has proven that right, with them ending up in a more relegation battle than probably should have been. So maybe they need to sort of rethink how to play football in League Two. 11th got Northampton Town, and for those that know, Northampton finished 3rd. Now, I was stupidly naive when I thought that they were going to, the sort of shock of automatic promotion as a miss out and then getting knocked out of the playoffs. I thought that was going to absolutely knock the stuffing out of them. You know, we've all sort of seen them, haven't we? When we're just like, oh, you just miss out on something, and then you have another missing out of something. I might mention this with Arsenal, of just missing out on the title in my next predictions that I do for the Premier League. How Arsenal missed out and so could have that sort of negative effect. That sort of similar thing I thought was going to happen with Northampton. I think we've seen that with Manchester United. And we saw that with Liverpool this season as well. It's all very, definitely seen that with Liverpool when they missed out on the treble. So now they've ended up in Europa League. So, but no, Northampton actually sort of proved my theory wrong by actually gathering their stuff together and getting automatics. So well done. 10th, I went with Sutton United. They finished 14th. I'm not going to complain about that. Again, there was 3 points in it. Hefty goal difference swing, of course. But I think the thing is, Sutton challenged playoffs last season. That was an overachievement. And I did think so at the time. But I thought Matt Gary was a very good manager. And I would probably, if they haven't sacked him already, sack him now. That final run of games was truly woeful. Like them 5 losses and a draw and the last 6 games of the season. That is why my prediction is not right. Because they could have been even a couple of them as wins. They are instantly up amongst the playoff pack of in 9th, 10th position. 9th, Mansfield Town. They finished 8th. We'll take that. If it wasn't for Barrow's collapse at the end of the season, really, they would have been 9th. But I think Nigel Clough, highly rate him as a manager. I even rated him at the Derby days, even though some of the fan base were a bit irksome towards him. I think that's the right word. But irritated anyhow. And I thought they started slow, as I predicted. And that's probably why they did miss out on the playoffs in the end. It was only on goal difference, 1 goal in it, really. And we could have actually seen Mansfield get promoted, but it was an interesting one. 8th, I went with Stockport County. I actually finished 4th. So, again, it was only 4 points between the two, from being at the top of the playoffs to being missing out on the playoffs. That's how close League Two was this season. And Dave Challinor, absolutely revolutionary. I should have even given him even more credence. Should have gone further and more bold. And yeah, the high standard players certainly proved it, didn't they? I thought we were just going to miss out, to be honest, but no, they definitely didn't. 7th, I went with Walsall. Yeah. I thought some of their transfers initially were quite ambitious, such as like Isaac Hutchinson or Liam Gordon, Peter Clark, so some of these sort of players. And, Michael Flynn was a well-known manager in League Two. He reached the playoffs with with Newport County twice. So, I thought that manager, is a decent manager. No, he didn't end up completely getting into the playoffs. No, 20 points short in the end. And I think Walsall sort of become a mid-table club, I'm sorry to say. Yeah. 6th, Doncaster Rovers. Okay, Doncaster. Do you care to explain how you finished 18th? I know there's a bit of issues with the owners that the fans have got a bit of quarrels with. I don't give much credence to these quarrels, to be honest. I know the investment is not as great as it could be, but at the same time, it is ultimately up to the players on the pitch. And you've got Jonathan Mitchell and Louis Jones as goalkeeping department and good wing backs. Sorry, not good wing backs. They did need to strengthen in the wing backs, actually. That was probably what they didn't do. But the centre backs, Adam Clayton and Tommy Rowe, I definitely thought were good players. Good midfielders. But I think there is patches in this squad that you can see. And they didn't bring them in. They didn't have wing backs. They didn't have wingers. They didn't have a very good centre forward. That's why they only scored 46 goals this season, which is mid-table. And the wing backs really weren't providing. They probably needed one more midfielder as well. But that's probably why they didn't do so well. Also, the management, bit of questionable choice. But yeah. 5th, Leyton Orient. They actually won the league. I don't think anyone really saw them coming and winning the league. I definitely saw them as being a good challenger to playoffs. They challenged playoffs the season before, but they sort of just missed out, really. And I thought they were going to be more consistent this season. They were definitely more consistent this season. But I did think they could win the playoffs. So I did think they were going to get promoted. But not in the fashion that they did. 4th, with ASC Wimbledon. Oh, that was so stupid thing to say. They actually finished 21st. They got Chris Gunter. They had Will Nightingale. They had Alex Pearce, Luke McCormick, Paul Kalambai, and Lee Brown. What on earth happened, Wimbledon? Can someone in the Dons please explain to me what has gone on this season about why you, with that squad on paper, being one of the best in the league, have you ended up almost being relegated to the National League? And yes, I didn't think the management was a great appointment to have Johnny Jackson in charge. And yes, relegation can be a death spiral almost. But come on, Wimbledon. Like, you knew how to get out of this league. You were top end of this league for many years. 3rd, I went with Gillingham. I actually finished 17th. That wasn't really a good idea, to be honest. I thought they made some positive move forward. probably didn't in the end. And I think they were mediocre this season, hence the 17th. Probably are going to be mediocre in the future, by the looks of it, then. They seem to be flatlining their level now in League Two, which is not really where the fan base want to be. Second, I went with Tranmere Rovers. They actually finished 12th. Now, they've been challenging for the playoffs every season since they got relegated. What was different this season? I mean, Mickey Mellon as manager, plenty of experience. Much experience of getting teams out of this league. Like, both from League Two and the National League, and also even the automatic promotions with Shrewsbury. But why couldn't he replicate that success at Tranmere? Somebody needs to tell me, who is a fan of the Merseyside outfit, why couldn't you challenge this year? Was the rest of the league too strong? Which I think is quite a weak argument when you think about it. You've got Grimsby finishing and Barrow finishing higher than you. I think Tranmere definitely could have challenged a bit better this season. First, I said Swindon Town. We actually finished 10th. Again, similar dynamic with the Robins. They reached the playoffs last season, and they normally challenge in and around it. I'm not entirely sure why they didn't this year. But I think winning the league was a step too far, probably, in what I said. But certainly, you'd expect of them to be up there as well. And they had a core of a decent squad. And maybe that's the issue. They didn't try to improve on it. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe an over-reliance on youngsters, maybe. Something like that. Okay, on to League One. Yay. My league. But my team are in. Oh. I have to talk about the Hurst Derby at some point in this video. But we're going to start with 24th Accrington Stanley. And they finished 23rd. So if we ignore Forest Green Rovers, because they were abysmal the entirety of the season, Accrington Stanley would have been last. And yeah, I do rate Coleman as manager, but like the mediocrity levels in Accrington were absolutely ridiculous, and it was plain to see for anyone watching from afar that this was going to be a dangerous trap. It was sort of like 16th, 17th, 16th again, plodding along. When was that going to be a viable method for the future? They didn't seem to have any ambition other than just to stay in the league. And that's always a dangerous game when you're like accepting that you should be in a relegation fight from the beginning. And they also have an awful goalkeeper. I mean, when you're conceding 77 goals, which is the third worst in the division. We'll talk about the miracle of Burton Albion later, because a lot of them goals were shipped in the first half of the season, and which really shouldn't be. But Accrington, I like the club, I like the management, but in terms of progress, you now have something at least to strive for in trying to get straight back up. But let that be a warning of mediocrity acceptance. 23rd, I went with Morecambe, finished 22nd. Again, another one almost precisely on the money. I don't think I've done bad this season. You can all write to me in the comments if you want, but I think this season's not been too bad. I didn't think Derek Adams was the best manager to have appointed in the first place. And I think I've kind of been vindicated by that. It's relegation form that Morecambe had. And I don't entirely know why they stuck with him into the next season for so long as well. And they really aren't League One level. I'm sorry to admit it, guys, but the standard of player was not where it was at. So, yeah. 22nd, Cambridge United. They finished 20th. I'm getting quite close with these. Again, quite lucky. Last game of the season, they didn't get relegated because of MK Dons. So the quality isn't great. I'm sticking by that. You sort of fluked it. And you did get second season syndrome. That is not a doubt. You are very lucky to be relegated. That's all I've really got to say. You winning your last game and MK Dons only drawing it, that's what did it. 21st, I was with Fleetwood. Fleetwood 13th. Well, this is the first bad call of the video. I think the fact is that they, I thought that they were absolutely in denial, sort of like where they were. But they did actually realise, even though the chairman was like, nah, we're better than this. I think they did realise and actually put some investment in the end. But, you know, I think the investment in the end came as a helpful boost to secure mid-table, but I didn't think that was forthcoming, really. 20th, Cheltenham. They finished 16th. Okay, Cheltenham were another one of them teams which, for an absolute age, it looked like they were going to be relegated and then went on a bit of a miracle run. So, yeah, they yet again managed survival quite comfortably. I didn't even think they were mid-table standard, to be honest. And I think you could argue that they only really picked up mid-table standard. I think got a few players in January. But yeah, the overachievement was clear for anyone to see. And yeah. So I thought there was an inevitable dip that was expected with the new management, but they recovered it. 19th, Port Vale, they finished 18th. I mean, all these teams are pretty much interchangeable at the bottom at the moment, aren't they? Like, there's not much between them. I mean, I think that was. I think the fans maybe have played a part, but and Daryl Clark, did he actually stay around at Port Vale for the whole season? Because I thought he moved on. That could be wrong. No, he did stick around. Oh no, he's not. When did he move? Yeah, he was sacked. Thought he was left. So I thought, yeah, decent manager, but it sort of was expected that he was going to fall off a cliff at some point. Yeah, I think maybe it was a bit harsh to sack him. But I'm not the board, ultimately. 18th, Lincoln City. Lincoln City actually finished 11th. That was quite a good season for Lincoln, considering we finished 17th the season before. And I thought they weren't really going to improve, sort of flatlining as a bottom half League One club. But no, they did sort of shock me. They were nowhere near the playoffs before anyone says they're in a playoff fight. But I think mid-table, upper half mid-table was also quite a shock. And I think they did sign... they didn't really get a better striker, though. It was the defence which sort of carried them for a lot of it. Because their striker was certainly down there as one of the worst, I'd have to say. But their defence has all been linked away to other clubs, haven't they? 17th, Shrewsbury Town. They actually finished 12th. I remember everyone raving about them. Oh, they could get an upset and finish in the playoffs. That really was never going to happen. Let's be honest, guys. I didn't think they were going to be towards relegation zone. I thought they were going to be mid-table, which is sort of where they finished. I'm just not entirely... On paper, I think Shrewsbury overachieved this season, to be honest. I did think they had good players, which I think they sort of rode their luck a bit. They didn't have many injuries, which I think was probably to the betterment of them. 16th, Burton Albion. They finished 15th. I mean, guys, someone tell me that I'm a good League One predictor. This is very good prediction so far. Yeah, I thought Burton Albion, mid-table club. They finished mid-table. I think there was some very good players. I mean, Deji Oshilaja, want to highlight him as one of the great ones. Terry Taylor did quite well as well. Hasselbank did get sacked, which I was not surprised about. I thought he should have been sacked much earlier. Did they offload some of their dead wood? They certainly did, which I think was quite a good idea. And so Hasselbank gone was a good move because it enabled his assistant to take over and complete the miracle and a definite strong end of the season, or second half of the season anyhow. 15th, Forest Green Rovers. Right, this one was a bit of a poor call in the end. Probably my first absolute stinker. I think I thought I gave a lot of weight to like the success breathing confidence analogy. Like you've seen it before, like one team goes up and then they sort of have an early success and then they sort of falter a bit, but ultimately are fine because of the first half of the season. No, they really struggled. They looked really out of their depth for the entirety of the league. So I didn't think Ian Birchnell was a good guy to a point, to be honest. And I think that was sort of proved. I mean, they did lose their manager, I think, before the season started, who guided them to promotion. Probably one of the reasons why they weren't in a good shape afterwards. 14th with Exeter City, and they finished 14th. So yeah, I thought they will have a good start to the season as their style of play reaped much success in League Two, and it has proven quite effective in League One as well. I mean, I did say they were going to have a good start and peter out towards the end of the season. Did that happen? Somewhat. They were sort of mid-table throughout the entirety of the season, really. You didn't really ever think they were going to do amazingly well or amazingly badly. It was just sort of, Exeter's mid-table. For almost like 5 weeks in, really. 13th, Plymouth Argyle. I did not see in a million years Plymouth getting 101 points. Never. They finished first, if you didn't know. And that is like, they brought in only three players. And like, but that was clearly enough. I think they went from like mid-table to automatic. I was shocked, really. So, yeah, I thought mid-table because they didn't have a really good goal scorer. But they did score 82 goals, so clearly I am wrong. Not the greatest goal scorers, the second best goal scorers. Ipswich Town are much better. But the defence, I would highlight as maybe a bit of a concern. A slight concern next season. But they're all right. 12th, Ipswich Town. Second. Yeah. So I may have predicted the two for automatic promoted teams to finish in mid-table. Well, they did finish mid-table for the last 3 seasons. I mean, it wasn't an outlandish shout to make. And I didn't think Kieran McKenna was that good with his time at Ipswich, but something actually clicked. The goal scoring ability, I don't know why I ever doubted, to be honest. And probably should do so again. I didn't think before to the issue was the midfield, by the way. I did make that clear. But clearly the midfield is decent as well. 11th, Bolton Wanderers. They finished 5th. Okay, so my top half of the table has slightly messed up. Bottom half, I was completely fine with. But, like, the Bolton, again, I thought similar to it would have been, like, quite similar to last season, really, with finishing mid-table. They have lost a few. They did lose a few players, but they did eventually replace them. That's the thing. But yeah, they did start off slow, as I said, but they did push on. The slow start wasn't anywhere near as slow as I thought. Like they did look like they were going to be a playoff outfit, well and truly in about the 3rd point of the season. 10th, Oxford United. Yeah, so Oxford finished 19th. Now, hear me out. Oxford have been challenging for playoffs for the 3 seasons before this one just gone. And they have the same manager. They have very decent players, or experienced players at this level anyhow. But the only reason that I thought they weren't going to be higher than this was because of the quality above. Then why are they 19th? Generally, like, I'm quite confused about Oxford's team because Oxford's team is good, the management is good, but how have they ended up in a relegation scrap and only just surviving? I sort of need a Hughes fan to explain this one to me as well. 9th, Bristol Rovers, and they finished 17th. Okay, I definitely slightly overhyped this team. They did finish where the bookies finished in mid-table. I thought Joey Barton was going to get his team roving up, if you excuse the pun. And they also got promoted with a fabulous last day, actually. I still remember that last day for League 2 season beforehand. That was quite something, wasn't it? But it was like, I thought they were good enough for the League 1, their whole starting 11, really. I think things got tough for them. They were at one point looking like they would finish around about 10th, 11th, 12th. But things did get quite tough towards the end of the season. 8th, Wycombe, and they finished 9th. Now, I don't know how Wycombe finished behind Portsmouth in the end, because I don't think anyone was thinking Portsmouth were generally going to overtake Wycombe at the end of the season. But it's one of the things, like, I thought they would look like challenging for the playoffs. They certainly did for a long time. It was Wycombe we were looking over our shoulders at, and as well as Peterborough. And when you don't look forward and start looking over your shoulder, that's when you have a crash. In both a car and in football, it turns out. But I think an issue was the weakening of the championship side, which did meant they and definitely didn't adequately replace that. The Lewis Wing, great player. We may have to mention him coming up in the predictions video and stuff, but they definitely have a good few players coming. I think playoffs could be a real shout next year, but we'll see. 7th, MK Dons. Right, they actually finished 21st. This was a blunder and a half. They did win the playoffs from League 2. And they did have a lot of players move to the championship. But I thought, well, which playoffs were they? They were in League 2, or they got promoted. But I genuinely thought that they had a good enough squad to like really push on, but no, because they were ripped apart by other bigger clubs, and when that happens, you get absolutely ravished. Sixth, I put Peterborough, and they finished. So I mean, I said they knew they were going to be relegated. I think everyone knew they were going to be relegated even before the season started. So the fact they prepared for League One football did sort of come in the end because they knew how to grind out the last few games, whereas Derby didn't. And they do have a good manager at this level, Grant McCann, not a doubt about it. Did they replace their goalkeeper adequately? Probably not. I'm not going to lie. It was the defense was a bit of an issue at times, but they did manage to get into playoffs. I mean, they managed to bottle the playoffs by conceding 5 goals. If your goalkeeper is not up to scratch, I think that's a fairly hefty sign that he's not. Fifth, I went with Sheffield Wednesday. They actually finished 3rd. Yeah, I thought Darren Moore, good manager, get many playoff finishes. And so, yeah. I mean, he has never received promotion automatically. And I think that really did prove to be the case when they sort of bottled the second place position to Ipswich, which it looked for a long time was guaranteed to be Ipswich, to be Wednesdays. But yeah, I did think they would win the playoffs. As his side is definitely championship standard, and I think they will do all right in the upcoming season. We'll have to see in my predictions video how well they do. But yeah, I think I'm happy with that. I predict they're going to divide the playoffs. They may have been slightly lower in terms of positions, but certainly all right. 4th, Barnsley, another absolute dingus, head on the hammer. That's not the nail on the head. That's what phrase I was looking for. That's the sort of things you like to see, isn't it? Again, that's precisely right. What can I say? Duff has done all right at Cheltenham, and he did all right at Barnsley. And that squad was more than capable to reach the playoffs. I mean, some people talking about an automatic promotion race was never in the picture. But them being in the playoffs, definitely. 3rd, Charlton Athletic. Right, Charlton, you finished 10th. I kind of want to know what's happening at this club. They are rumoured to get new owners. I have heard this. They weren't long ago in the Championship. And they have some very good team players still to this day. Jaden Stockley, Stephen Sessegnon, and I thought Ben Garner, good manager. He reached the playoffs with Swindon. I do think the issue was sort of bridging the gap between League One and League Two football, which I think is often understated. I think a lot of people say, oh, yeah, League One, League Two, it's the same league. It's not. There are some teams who can, like some teams, yeah, are Championship standard and some are like League Two standard. That's what League One is. That is generally what it is. Like you could run through your teams in League One, which should be in the Championship, probably down to about 10th. And then the rest of them, you could run down and saying they're probably League Two standard or League One standard, if you wish. But certainly not like would make it in the Championship. So I think some of them, they were completely fine overcoming some of the weaker teams below them, but not so much when it came to ending up beating ones above, hence why they finished 10th, not 3rd. 2nd, I went with Derby County. Right. I watched this on the TV in the pub, and I was getting very annoyed watching that final match of the season. It was breaking my heart, and generally got quite upset. I didn't even know Paul Warne was going to be manager. What upsets me even more is that he was manager for the most of the season and they still didn't get into the playoffs. Second, maybe was a little bit unreasonable. I am a Derby fan after all. Maybe it was a bit sort of thinking about it. And Christian Bielik, he left. Richard Stearman hardly appeared. Scott Loach hardly appeared. But some of them players, Nathaniel Mendez-Lang, McGoldrick, Hurahan, and Cashin and Davis are all really should be doing better. They played well for us, extremely well. I'm trying to pinpoint what we lacked. Probably wing backs, I think was quite a big issue, especially on one side. I think it was left side where we lacked a wing back. And also trying to break down defences. I think that was an issue that we had quite a lot. Like, we scored enough goals, but at the same time, we were trying to win games 1-0. And that, towards the end of the season, that's never a good plan. First, I went with Pompey, Portsmouth. They finished 8th. So I thought Danny Cowley, good manager, very good manager, doing both well with Lincoln and Huddersfield. And also well of Pompey, and they have good players. Like, a lot of them are championship level players. So, I mean, they were a team which should have maybe done a bit better, but at the same time, 8th probably is justifiable for them. But in terms of League One, that's over now. The pain's gone until we come to Forest, of course. But that, I think, was very well predicted in terms of predictions. So far, the only bad one I've had is sort of League Two, isn't it? Championship. Right. This could be bad. 24th went with Birmingham City. We actually finished 17th. Right. This was really hard to predict. One, I thought there was going to be a points deduction. I think many Championship fans did. They didn't have that points deduction. Secondly, there was no clue who the owner was at the time I made the video. So some of the players brought in, I thought they wouldn't bring in any, maybe. And the management, John Eustace, lovely guy, but never really managed apart from Kidderminster Terriers. Does that show on paper what happened with Birmingham? Well, they finished 17th, which I don't think is a ridiculous position. I think they did better than a lot of people expected, though, including myself. So I think that is the issue. 23rd, Reading. Well, they finished in 22nd. So yes, I will take that. We had a transfer embargo, lost several big players, and they did get a points deduction as well, and they didn't appoint the right manager. Paul Ince, not for me. Rotherham, I put on 22nd. I'm actually finished 19th. I thought, typical Rotherham fashion, up and down, as a yo-yo club. So it was quite unsurprising that I decided to back them for relegation. And they had Paul Warne at the time, so I thought, yeah. But the manager they replaced him with has that. Well, Paul Warne left in quite a strong position. I'm not saying that they didn't, but they certainly, the wingers and the pace that Rotherham have did change the style of play that they were playing to enable them to actually survive, which I didn't expect. But at the same time, 6 points in it, we'll accept it. 21st said Bristol City. Actually finished 14th, which I think was quite high. Even looking at that now, I'm a bit surprised. Although there's sort of that jumble of people from Bristol City downwards is sort of, you know, it could really have had any order, couldn't you? Certainly down to sort of Huddersfield sort of region. They're all sort of the same. They have been at the wrong end of the table for all of the seasons, and that's like bang mid-table being in 14th, isn't it? And they managed to keep hold of Wyman, I think, which was a huge reason why they did finish higher than 21st. They also did improve in defence, which is evidence from the. Well, I was going to say evidence from the 55 goals conceded, but 56 goals conceded, which doesn't really prove my point. Actually, it is sort of mid-table defence. It's not the worst defence, but it's not the best. But yeah, 24th with Blackpool, and they actually finished 23rd. Well, I was worried about who they'd bring in. They brought in Michael Appleton. I don't know if Michael Appleton is still at the club. I have a feeling he is not, because for most of the season, Blackpool was, they got rid of him. Blackpool was in a really sticky predicament of being almost relegated for most of the season, but they did manage to, well, they were relegated, weren't they? But was one of the things like, you could have not possibly foreseen a way out. And I think if they did appoint a different manager, though, at the start of the season and got a few more players, they could have got 20th. But yeah. 19th, P&E, or Preston North End. They finished 12th. They always seem to finish mid-table, but this is higher mid-table than I thought. In fact, they were in one of that group which seemed to be chasing the playoffs until absolutely woeful end of the season. They had some good acquisitions that they brought in, but they did lose strength up front, but they did adequately replace the strength up front. I thought they were going to be lower mid-table because I didn't know how good the incoming strikers would be. Again, still not as good. It's only 45 goals, which is an awful record. But when you're a Preston team which always seems to win by 1-0, then it's not too bad. 18th went with Hull City, and they finished 15th. Again, not too dissimilar, really. They finished 19th the season before. I didn't really know the players from Turkey who they were bringing in. So it's like, is the whole team going to be good enough to push away from a relegation battle? And that was my ultimate thing that I decided, yes, just because they definitely lost some key players. Let's not forget that. I mean, they were a bit deluded, some of these Hull fans who thought they were going to be challenging for the playoff. So, and I think I sort of saw the humbling. Yeah, I saw them eat humble pie myself by actually seeing my prediction more likely than theirs. To be honest, there was not really a chance they were going to get promoted in any way. 17th went with Wigan. Yeah, I should have seen the management as being a bit of an issue, to be honest. But I thought the forward duo was going to be all right, but they actually had the lowest amount of goals scored in the entire league. That's maybe the striker duo of Charlie Wyke and Will Keane will go down as not a good combination for this season, and probably not championship quality anymore. 16th, we went with Luton Town. Okay. Time to talk about the fairy tale of Luton Town. I thought that the season before the one we've just had was a massive overachievement. Like, you looked at Barnsley, they had a massive overachievement as well. And I thought they were just going to be absolutely falling off a cliff because they're a small club. They can't sustain that position, no. Well, it seems like they can. Because that squad replicated the form we had and got promoted via the playoffs. Very strong team as well that finished third. That was a solid 5 points above fourth. And I would have liked to see Coventry as well go up. I didn't mind between Luton and Coventry. They were both fairy tale stories coming from lower leagues of football, League Two or National League, depends which one you were vying for. I listened to it on the radio. I thought they were quite hard done by in some of the decisions they got. Some of them I think were spot on. But I also think the question of whether the VAR should be included in the Championship playoffs, ignore the other league playoffs, because I definitely don't think they should be included in League One and League Two playoffs, because you're not going into a league which does, but maybe going into the Premier League, you are going into a league of VAR. So, yeah, it's one of them. It's a controversial thing which I'll leave you guys to discuss in the comments below. But I think Luton, congratulations, and sorry for doubting you. 15th, I went with Millwall, and they actually finished 8th in the end. A lot stronger than I thought. I always saw them as more of a typical mid-table team, whereby they challenged for the playoffs, but never quite reached the end, which is sort of what happened this season. They did challenge for the playoffs, but didn't quite make it as well. It's a team full of draws, though, but they've not drawn many this season, to be fair. They've only drawn 11, which is better than normal, which sort of means that Gary Rowett is learning not to draw his games. I think the striker of loss of Jed Wallace really wasn't an issue in the end. He did score 57 goals, which was all right, really. Probably a few positions lower in the table in terms of lack of goals. But defence is always with Millwall dead solid, only conceding 50 goals, which sounds about right for where they were in the end. Probably even a bit higher in terms of defence. But yeah, I thought they were going to draw a few more games than they did. 14th, Cardiff City. Cardiff City actually finished 21st. This is actually a shock to me, the 21st. I thought the squad was so much better than this. I know they lost Flint as a good centre-back. But it was that also kamikaze style of play. A lot of lethal passes in the area. And so it's exciting football. Should work in the Championship, but it doesn't always. And it had quite devastating effects, really. Couldn't score enough. And that was sort of the issue. Defence wasn't too bad for where they were, actually. But I think if it wasn't for the weak strikers, then they would have done better. But yeah. 13th went with Blackburn Rovers. Yeah, they finished 7th. Their bottle from last season didn't really continue ending up at this one. And I think what happened to Brereton Diaz? Because that was a player who everyone was saying was going to leave. Yes, he stayed around. My thinking was that they were going to lose him. They didn't, hence why they finished just outside the playoffs. They did lose some players, but they weren't ultimately that important in the larger scheme of things. I thought the quality brought in was not good enough, but it clearly was. Yeah, the Championship isn't looking good for me at the moment in terms of predictions. 12th, I got Sunderland, and Sunderland finished 6th. You see, they ended up finishing in the playoffs, but at the time, people were like, "Oh, we're going to go in and finish in the playoffs," or "Oh, we're going to go and get relegated." That was sort of like the two different predictions that people had. So I thought I'll go safe and go mid-table, sort of slap bang in the middle of where these two ends of extremes are. But no, they've done better. Their good form has carried them through to this season. Good fans as well. Got no qualms with saying that. But I think they will need to also consolidate and build a squad that is a championship standard. Well, they had a championship standard squad. I just didn't see it, is the issue. 11th, Queen's Park Rangers. They actually finished 20th. Again, that bad form from last season really continued into this one. But I thought, you know, they got rid of Warburton. That was going to be completely fine. You know, new manager, Michael Beale, adapting to the league, slowly rising. You know, no, he was awful as well. It's been an awful, woeful season really for Queen's Park Rangers. 10th, I went with Coventry. Should have gone higher. They actually finished 5th. Yeah, they did keep hold of their core players and reach even the playoff final. Every season, Coventry seemed to improve under Mark Robins. They were 12th the season before last, so finishing 5th is quite a big achievement, I would say. But in terms of what I think, in terms of, I didn't think there was enough quality for the playoffs. I really didn't think teams like West Brom, Norwich, Watford were going to bottle it so bad. So, yeah. 9th, Stoke City. This is one of the reasons they're called the most unpredictable league in the world, because they finished 16th. Like, they are always back to reach the playoffs, right? Explain why they finished 16th this season, bookies. It hasn't materialised. I mean, they do have a good squad, I admit, but not anymore. I think they're aging and they haven't really replaced them. They have had mid-season lull again and end of season lull. It's one of the issues that needs to be corrected. I don't have any answers, by the way, for the Potters, but I think they do need to stop spending masses of money, invest in the youth, and stop like bringing in 30-year-olds who are bygones of another age. Maybe that could start improving, but I'm really struggling to see it, to be honest. 8th, I went with Huddersfield, and Huddersfield actually got 18th. Yeah, but they reached the playoffs the season before, so it was a bit of a poor showing. I'm not going to lie. That I did not expect personally, and yeah, they did lose Lewis O'Brien and Harry Toffolo, which I think had a bigger effect than I probably gave to it. I think that was ruinous for the club. So yeah, I thought they were. I thought they were still a good core squad, but I don't think they are. I think they need a bit more players to come in. 7th, Swansea, and Swansea actually finished 10th, so not a million miles away, only 3 points off in the end. It was an improvement this season for Swansea. I think you'd have to say that. There is a groundwork there, I think, for future success. They did have wobbles, but I think there is definitely groundworks and roads in the making. But in terms of this season, decent one, not as good as I thought they would be. I thought Joel Perreault was going to be a bit better than he maybe was. I know he wasn't bad, but yeah. And I think that team is still good enough on paper to do well. 6th, Burnley. They actually won the league by 101 points, 10 clear of Sheffield United, their nearest rivals. I should have gone with the bookies and back him to go straight up into the Premier League. But I thought sacking Sean Dyche and bringing in Kompany was going to be a really poor decision. And think of how many players actually lost in terms of that season when they got relegated. And that always happens. Teams that get relegated get their squad ripped apart. But especially a team like Burnley, which was known for defensive ability. But I didn't know many of the Belgian league players who were coming in. And really, that unknown quantity to me was something that I'd have to deal with these predictions, because if I don't know what the player is, like, then how am I meant to base my predictions, really? 5th, Sheffield United actually finished 2nd. Yeah, I think Sheffield United has caught us off a bit, caught a lot of people off guard, really. They lost Morgan Gibbs-White. They lost Burke. They lost McGoldrick and Freeman. But it was one of the things, like, Billy Sharp has yet again proved that he has come as being a hero, but the defense is even better. Like, only 39 goals conceded. That was a good defense, and I think I didn't put enough emphasis on how good players like Kieran Clark were. 4th, Middlesbrough. They finished 4th. There you go. Yeah, I mean, what else can I say? It was sort of somewhat inevitable that they'd reach the playoffs, I think, with the squad size and strength they have. They always seem to be up there anyhow. And I think I even thought they might get promoted. I didn't see the Coventry result coming, to be honest. I think that was a shock to us all, really. And I reckon if they did get to the final, would have been a very different final. And I reckon Middlesbrough, with their style of play, would have adapted to Luton's much better. So it was all by that 1-goal margin, really, wasn't it? 3rd, I went with West Bromwich Albion, actually finished 9th. Yet again, another frustrating season for the Baggies. I know they got rid of Steve Bruce fairly early on, but they didn't really ever look like improving much, despite how many good players they actually have in midfield. You can have all the good midfielders in the world. If that defense is not good enough, which it's not, it's conceded 53 goals, which is nowhere near what you need to get into playoffs. I know a couple of teams conceded more than that, and even more so was the 59 goals scored. It was not quite good enough, like, in terms of it's where they was in terms of that goal difference, is where they were in terms of the actual final position. 2nd, Watford. I thought that was going to be like an inevitable nailed on a yo-yo club, but the loss of some of their players that they did lose when they got relegated, that bites hard, really. And I think that bit harder than they thought. They only scored 56 goals. That is a bit of a concern. And I think Watford need to start looking at some strikers. And 1st, Norwich City. And I always thought, this is boring, isn't it? Particularly Norwich first. They finished 13th, which I think is a shock for everyone, really. What happened to Teemu Pukki? Can someone explain to me, where is Teemu Pukki in all of this? Because, honestly, like, how many goals has he actually scored this season? Because he scored 10 goals in the Championship this season. That's less than he's ever scored in the Premier League. I think this is the thing, isn't it? Like, it's all good, sort of saying that Teemu Pukki is a good player, but if he's only scored 10 goals in the Championship now, is it? I think it might be time to try and cash in on him. I'm not going to lie. Dean Smith, bygone. I'm sorry, he's not good enough anymore. Right. Finally, we're going to go Premier League. And I think the Premier League, interesting league as usual. Always throws up some surprises. 20th, I thought it was going to be Fulham. The Fulham way, get relegated and then promoted. Relegated. No, they finished 10th. Woo! Wow. The mighty Mitrovic did a very good job this season. And I am so shocked at what Fulham have done this season. It's hard to award an underdog of the season, but I would say Fulham, maybe Villa, maybe Brighton. There's so many very much underdogs. By the way, spoilers, the Premier League's predictions have been awful this season. 19th, Bournemouth. They finished 15th. Right, again, I didn't think Bournemouth had the quality. I didn't think they had a good enough goalkeeper, although that's been proved wrong. I didn't think they had a good enough striker, which has again been proven wrong. I mean, I really thought their goal input was not going to be good enough, but they actually scored. They conceded 71 goals, maybe, but they scored 37, so they weren't the most prolific. So I'm not entirely sure how they've managed to stay up. I think it's more of a case of teams around them being worse. Like, you shouldn't be able... 40 should be the benchmark in the Premier League, let's say, for being able to stay up in the division. Why is there 3 teams beneath the team got 14 points of West Ham who have all stayed up? Like, that is genuinely the big thing, isn't it? 18th, Leeds United. They did finish 19th, so I'm taking this one. They got relegated. Get him. I knew this was coming. They were scraping by last season, and they were deluded. They were in cloud cuckoo land. But they lost their stars. They were to replace them. I mean, Brendan Harrison was good. Let's not say that they didn't replace him with a decent player, but at the same time, not anywhere near the levels of Rafinha. And so inevitably they suffered the consequences. 17th, Brighton. They finished 6th. This came as a shock. I thought it was an overachievement last season, but it's clearly was just another step in the building process. I thought they peaked too soon. They lost Bissouma. They lost Cucurella. And which I didn't know at the time, but it looked inevitable. And I thought most of the other players weren't actually good enough to take everything, but they got rid of Mopai and brought in McAllister. And McAllister, I highly rate. They got Moises Caicedo, or however you pronounce his name. Again, another great player. They always seem to find these players, and the moral of the story, I think, is never sleep on Brighton, really. 16th, Wolverhampton Wanderers. They finished 13th in the end. Yeah, I don't think I was too far off with this. I think they did stop over-relying on Jose Sarr, though. Mostly because did Jose Sarr actually stick around? That is a question, because he did. But it was one of those things, like, they didn't over-rely on him this season to bail him out of trouble. It was important to them, but I think the issue still with Wolves is the goal scoring department. I have to say it. It's one of them things, like, if you don't score goals, you can't reap rewards in the long run. Scored 31 goals, which was the lowest in the Premier League. That's like a really big concern. And they didn't address that, but somehow they still managed to stay up quite comfortably as well. 15th, Southampton. They actually finished 20th. Now, I thought Southampton, they always finish in sort of around about mid-table-ish, lower mid-table especially. But they sacked Hasenhüttl, which I thought, yes, at the time, but then looking back, who they brought in to replace? Nathan Jones. Was it Nathan Jones or Graham? I can't remember. It was Nathan Jones, I'm pretty certain, who they brought in, who was an absolutely stupid appointment to even bring in the first place, considering his experience was not at the Premier League ready. And they should have brought in somebody who, on paper, was more experienced. And it was early in the season, so they could have definitely built for the long term. But no, it was just really not good enough. 14th, Newcastle United. Okay. I did laugh at Newcastle United finishing in the top 6, but they finished 4th. I apologise, Newcastle. Hello, fellow Geordies. I apologise to you. And thankfully, I haven't been killed because I don't think anyone's heard me say these predictions about Newcastle. Next season, I don't think I will be sleeping on you as much. Although, warning, I don't think you're going to be able to replicate the Champions League position. We'll see. We'll see. There could be some investment. There inevitably will be. But I thought, you know what, player by player, this team is still sort of mid-table team. And I didn't actually think Eddie Howe was that experienced at being able to get players that high up, but he really has shown me to be a fool. 13th, Nottingham Forest. Right, I should have gone lower. They finished 16th. This was following head, not heart. There were so many players brought in. That we even brought in what's his name from Navas, and the level of players they brought in, they should not have been as low as 16th. I'd rather than being relegated with 0 points, to be honest. But they would have been relegated in a normal season, to be honest. I mean, they've been woeful the bottom 3. So yeah. 12th, Aston Villa. I was a bit confused when people said they were going to challenge for Europe, and we did actually get European position. They got 7th place, the Conference League. They did have to get rid of Gerrard to do it, so I think Steven Gerrard would have ended up doing what Vieira did last season at Palace and just flatlining it mid-table. But they did bring in good players and got rid of some dead wood. But I just didn't think it was good enough to challenge for Europe. I didn't know at the time they were going to bring in Unai Emery. That was a very good signing. Well, if you want to refer to stealing someone else's manager as the signing, then I am. But that was very good. 11th, Crystal Palace, and they finished 11th. It's the first one I got exactly dead on in the Premier League. They reach mid-table, don't they, every season? They're very good in terms of what we're doing. I haven't spent loads of money as usual, but I think they've got a very respectable team, and I think people always sleep on Palace. I think they always say, "Oh yeah, they're not that good, are they?" Or they just forget that they've been in the Premier League, just consistent mid-table performers. 10th, Brentford. Finished 9th. I'll take that. The thing is, there's a lot of people saying that Brentford were going to have a second season syndrome. And I didn't believe that because their transfer policy was much better than those which wanted to do. So you tend to have second season syndrome from you've seen the likes of Leeds, although they're third syndrome now. Sheffield United, a few others as well. Aston Villa, I think, at one point. And it tends to happen, especially in the Premier League. But what this season, Like, I never expected Brentford to experience that because of their good investment. And although they did lose Christian Eriksen, I think they were very much good enough to finish in the position they did. I thought they were going to finish 10th, or finish 9th. For me, that's mid-table enough for me. 9th, Everton. Oh, why? No, what did I put? What, I'm just reading this. Why did I put that Lampard is an all-right manager, which people are writing off as inexperienced? Did I actually say that? I mean, obviously Lampard did well at Derby, but he's still woeful in the Prem. Absolutely woeful in the Prem. So yeah, it was good that they brought in Sean Dyche, one of my favourite managers. Bearing in mind, I think Sean Dyche, I'd love to see him at Derby. He was a great lad, but I'm baffled at why I've put 9th. I'm lost for words. Don't heed me when writing a bet, clearly. 8th, Leicester, also equally a stupid decision. This one less, son. But I thought it was ridiculous that Leicester would even finish bottom half. I saw no basis for this. They weren't in Europe, so they didn't have any distractions, as like West Ham did this season. They have a very good squad. Maybe I was a bit too generous by saying that. There are some players who are like historically successful at the club, of course. Like you got Madison, you got Vardy, Dewsbury Hall. But actually, it's like really quite struggling to name like out and out players that actually would fit a box nowadays because a lot of them are aging. You know what? I think I might need to they might need to bring in some new youth, don't we? 7th, Manchester United. I actually finished 3rd, which I think the transfer window wasn't good for Manchester United in the summer. I'm going to stick by that. Although they did bring in some good. I'm just surprised they've managed to do so well without a recognised goal scorer. I think Rashford has taken that mantle on quite well. I say not a recognised striker, but like Rashford's obviously the striker, which scored a lot of goals. But they've scored only 58 goals, which is nowhere near as much as what should be the case for somebody in the Champions League positions. I mean, it does shock you, doesn't it? That, yeah, they did try to start an overhaul, didn't they? And I think January certainly did improve them. I think it could have gone either way, depending on which January something window. I think they were around about 5th at the time. And it was like they could either improve and challenge for the Champions League, or they could bottle it and end up like 6th, 7th. But they went the other way. But I couldn't possibly tell that because I didn't know what type of January transfer window they were going to have. 6th, Chelsea. Whew. I said I was a bit. I thought Tuchel was going to be sacked not as early as he did. Though, like, I didn't expect Tuchel to be sacked like almost within a matter of days, sort of like, or weeks, anyhow, Bowley coming in. I mean, a lot of players did leave, but I didn't realize that was going to have such a detrimental effect of just bringing so many rubbish players, or players for the future, should I say, anyhow, into the squad. But that was certainly an appalling game. Well, appalling season, rather, not just a game. But I can't really pinpoint one down which would be the worst because there's been so many bad ones, haven't there? Fifth, I went with West Ham United. I actually finished 14th. I thought they'd become an established top six side, and I was quite happy to set this status quo. Nope. They are on track, though, aren't they, to win the Conference League? I believe they are in the final of the Conference League, which they could win. I actually quite expect them to win. They're against Fiorentina, which is a decent side. It's not going to be an easy task, but I think West Ham have got what it takes. So I think they will be in Europe next year. You get Europa League, don't you, win the Conference League, which it'd be quite interesting to see both Man City and West Ham win European competitions. Return of the English top dogs in Europe, really. But I thought some of the hidden gems were going to be better than they actually are. But, you know, I think this season has been a bit of a letdown. Fourth, Arsenal. Right, Arsenal finished second. This, I thought it was going to be small steps and Champions League qualification we're going to get. They have a lot of good youth. I did not think they were going to be challenging for a title. Partly because I just didn't think that they... something was like, Jesus is good, but he's not good enough for the title because Man City have sold him. Stuff like that. And he was really just amazing to watch that Arsenal could potentially have upset Man City's dominance, but ultimately it was not to be. But I think between second and fourth was quite a big gap this season. Between second and third was a big gap. Third, Tottenham. They actually bottled Europe and finished 8th. Yeah, they shouldn't have sacked Conte, really, because I reckon they could have finished in the Champions League, maybe even at the behest of Newcastle if they stuck with Conte. It was some of the players they brought in, like Richarlison and Basuma, and that I thought would have been good transfer business. I don't actually think in hindsight that it was now. But I thought their overall team had actually improved. And definitely with a new manager, it could have been. Second, Liverpool. Yeah, they finished 5th. I didn't even get Champions League. I thought it was going to be very similar. I think it was because last time I doubted Liverpool. I think of the predictions before this, I said they're going to finish somewhere like mid-table because of like the slowness of the midfield and stuff. But yeah, that wasn't quite what ended up happening. Really, they didn't end up. They've not won the Champions League because they've got knocked out that, and they've not won either the FA Cup or the EFL Cup. So both of which I was wrong with. So yeah, I think Liverpool disappointing season ultimately. And finally, Man City. It is quite boring. It is inevitable. They always win the title. I'm going to predict them right now to win the title next season before even doing any research. Like, they've brought Haaland in. Like, Haaland stepped up to the plate and absolutely demolished all sense of reasonable football stuff of the modern day era. I mean, we can't forget Dickie Dean, of course, but like in terms of Premier League era stuff, record breaking. And the fact that he contributed to 94 goals that City scored, I can't see a change in the future. And I've seen they won the domestic cup, as I said, and they won the league. Do they win Champions League? I don't know. But thank you very much for watching. Please do check out my new channel. I will be trying to upload this evening once I get my friends all sorted and gathered. There'll be a few of us in. I'm probably the only one recording, but there'll be about 8 of us, I think, are going to be on the server. But goodbye for now.